North America versus India on European server.
Yeah, wait.
I guess that's the most fair.
Is it? Oh, for Demi specifically, I guess, because like
Yeah,
I think Demi has better ping, right?
No, because like you're either playing on NA West, Australia, Singapore, or you can play on EU, where I feel like they have more similar pings.
True.
Anyway, spawning in the top right-hand corner of 2,000 atmospheres, we have from Team Super Extra TriGGeR.
And spawning in the bottom left-hand corner of 2,000 atmospheres ALE, we have the Indian Zerg player himself representing Alpha X. It's his opponent's ex-teammate, Demi.
Super Extra, right? I'm not missing something.
Team Super.
Team Super. Okay.
Yeah. The E is because Super on Korea is Super KR, and on Europe it's Super E, and on America it's Super A.
Right. Okay.
Not confusing at all.
So TriGGeR opting for a gate scout, not blocking Demi's hatchery. Probably indicates he's going Stargate, but that's what we expect from most Protoss players nowadays.
Yeah, I guess I wanted to pick your brain a little bit about the new patch and this matchup, right? Because I think we are all in agreement that this matchup was probably influenced and affected the most with the new patch. But like, have you noticed like any trends coming out from a lot of the pros, from the Protoss side at least?
I've been seeing Hero do a lot of Phoenix builds, like Disruptor drop into Phoenix, or just Oracle Voidway into 2-target Phoenix, and I think part of it is because Muta play got a lot stronger now that Protoss players aren't rushing out Voidway into Carrier. Yeah, but also I would say Twilight is decently common on maps that are called Berlingrad or Curious Mines, just because they're so short, and like especially on Berlingrad when you can mine out the minerals, and it makes Zergs a bit more uncomfortable to defend something.
Yeah, I think that's like a good thing overall, that we're seeing a little bit more variety. Like we saw a lot of the same in this matchup. We saw a lot of Queen Walks, we saw a lot of double Stargate Void Ray. It did become a very samey, so it's really cool that like a relatively small patch was able to do a lot to this matchup. At least it feels that way to begin with anyway.
Okay, TriGGeR going for a small mind game, going Warp Gate before Stargate. Usually you start up the Stargate as fast as possible to gather up your first Oracle or Void Ray. But this might confuse Demi a bit and make him think he's playing versus Twilight build. But he's not committing to the full Stalker.
Yeah. We'll see if Demi can actually like confirm and get a proper scout off here, to confirm whether or not there is a Stargate or a Twilight Council. We'll see. As you said, there isn't going to be a Stalker coming out to deny the Overlord.
So Demi didn't take one of his 4 starting links and send it across the map for a run by, which I think is safer if you haven't had your natural blocked, because you don't need 2 links in each base to defend the Adept Shades.
True. Yeah. I mean, he's going in anyway, despite not moving out with his lings, and he will end up confirming that it is going to be a Stargate in the end. So a little bit of mind games to begin with, but I mean, he'll figure it out in the end.
Third base from TriGGeR. He's doing this before starting up the second Stargate unit, so it's like pretty much the earliest possible third if you're not skipping your 54 pylon or skipping your Warp Gate in the wall.
Yeah, I think that's like kind of a stylistic thing that we've noticed a lot from TriGGeR, is that it does feel like he's a relatively greedy and like macro oriented player. Like we see it a lot in his PvP, and I feel like we're seeing that a little bit here in this game at least.
Demi, since TriGGeR hasn't made a Voido or a Stalker, this Oracle, this Overlord in the main base is getting a lot of free information. If Demi was a bit more vigilant, he could have also seen the Twilight Council drop down as a follow-up. This is quite a quick Twilight Council. We'll see if it's just for Blink or maybe for Glaives.
Yeah. It is going to be for Blink in the end, and unfortunately, as you said, like, Demi was a little bit slow to respond, and he didn't confirm what was coming his way. So now, like, he's in the dark, right? It could be Glaives, it could be Blink, right? He kind of doesn't really know. He at least confirmed that there wasn't a third unit coming out of the Stargate, so at least he has that to work with.
Pretty decent early game for Demi overall. He has lost three drones to the Oracle, but no losses to some adepts shedding in, and TriGGeR's been very conservative with his adepts overall.
Oh yeah, he hasn't really committed too hard to them or anything like that. Meanwhile, we just see Demi, just confirming that there is a third base. Unfortunately, he wasn't really able to do anything to stop it. Just confirming that it is there. As a response, we see fourth base being thrown down. He's droning up as much as possible as well. I mean, he's pretty free to do so. Like, we do see that again. TriGGeR was focused a lot more on that economy instead.
Yeah, and as a result, he's kept up practically even with Demi's work account through the entire mid game. So yeah, this could be a bit of trouble for Demi, who needs to deflect this Stalker Sentry move out, ideally without losing his fourth base.
Oh boy, here we go. The move out is coming. We do have a decent amount of Lings here. Is it really going to be enough though? Because we are going to have the support of these Oracles as well to help deal with them. Meanwhile, okay, one of the Oracles already taking a decent amount of damage. In come the Lings. And with the activated Pulsar Beam, yeah, the Lings are going to have a hard time engaging, but they're out of energy.
TriGGeR lost a sentry there, which is pretty big. You don't want to lose your sentries and have them accumulating energy. Blink isn't quite done yet, so he might want to pull back just for now before it finishes. Does lose two Stalkers, but overall, he's trading pretty well.
Yeah, exactly. Especially because a lot of the army of Demi was distracted in that natural base. There was a bit of a adept run by. 5 drones went down. But in the end, TriGGeR, he does opt to back off.
One thing to note is TriGGeR didn't actually scout the fourth base location of Demi. And so he didn't manage to cancel that fourth base, which I feel like he might have been able to do, considering Demi was a little struggling at even its third base.
Yeah, 100%, right? Like, he definitely could have come in at a different angle at that fourth base instead, and it is a little bit unlucky that TriGGeR only just now scouts where that fourth base is, as he loses one of his Oracles. A little bit lucky from the side of Demi. Like, you know, he survived, and again, his working out's pretty healthy, but God, I'm just so impressed with how TriGGeR's been able to probe up this game. It's crazy.
So one thing to notice, TriGGeR did get the tag off on the Spire and is now making Phoenixes to defend. Usually when you get about 3 Phoenixes out to defend a possible meter play, and Demi is known for his meter play.
Yeah, I think the other important thing to note is that TriGGeR is aware of that. Like, they are ex-teammates, they have practiced together before, they played against each other in in-house tournaments. I feel like TriGGeR should be well aware of that. But of course, the big question should still be like whether or not Demi is going to commit to those meters. He's getting +1 air attack. I feel like we know that he wants to. Will he though? That's kind of the question.
Well, TriGGeR is covering his bases. He's got double disruptive production +2 and charge on the way. He's getting a more sophisticated army, and Demi is going to need to match this with like 20-30 Banelings so he can effectively deal with the ground army without overcommitting into mutas. Which he is keeping up a very big gas bank, but he hasn't made the mutas quite yet.
Yeah, it's possible that he just wants to make them all at once as a little bit more of a surprise to catch his opponent off guard. But we do see that TriGGeR, like, you know, he's still playing it safe. He's still producing Phoenixes. He doesn't have the highest Phoenix count. You know, he still only has that 1 Stargate producing. So maybe if Demi comes out with 16 mutas, he can, which is exactly what he's doing. Maybe he can catch TriGGeR off guard. Maybe.
TriGGeR's gonna need to get some map vision to ideally spot these mutas before they get into his space. If he's watching closely, he will be able to see the cocoons morphing into mutas.
Yeah, he does get the tag off in that main base. Are his eyes on it though, as the mutas are on the way? Did he see though? He's responding with the ground army of Demi, and again, he has plenty to respond. He has plenty of disruptors here as well. But I don't see an additional Stargate, and I don't see continued Phoenix production.
Well, he does have battery in most of his bases and a cannon in his main base, so he's reasonably well protected, and does have, like, if he sees this muta without coming in and macros the Phoenix away. Okay.
And as you said, he does keep the Phoenixes alive for now. The mutas do finally reveal themselves, but they have to be so careful. Again, we don't have a fleet beacon, we don't have Phoenix range.
So TriGGeR's opted for a move out in response, and Demi's ground army is not the biggest, so he's gonna need to defend and multitask right now.
Yeah, exactly. And in comes both armies as the Novas are going up, and oh my god, we do see a bit of a split at the last moment there, but we still have so many disruptors left.
Meanwhile, the mutas have won the fight against the Phoenix and cannons and forcing a Stalker warp in at home. Although TriGGeR does not have a warp prism, so it's not really costing him that much to do so.
Yeah, exactly. He couldn't reinforce across the map anyway. Meanwhile, he's still gaining more ground. All the banelings are kind of wasted on a handful of those zealots, so TriGGeR keeps on moving on. Meanwhile, the mutas actually turn around.
Yeah, the 4 cannons at that 4th base, so he can't really contest that. And all very nice disruptor shots, and Demi's running out of ground.
Oh, exactly. Every single roach gets cleaned up. Meanwhile, we have a recall to come back home. TriGGeR not feeling too confident about his anti-air, and unfortunately, he missed 2 disruptors.
Demi, he should have just embraced his inner Ragnarok and held down the muta key some more instead of 22 roaches.
True. A lot of his gas bank was wasted on these roaches, especially because, again, like, the ground army for TriGGeR is still looking pretty impressive. And now he's kind of giving TriGGeR a bunch of breathing room. To be fair, though, Demi has remax, but on a relatively inefficient army.
To be honest, like, I would prefer Mutaling versus this army.
Yeah.
Maybe not versus the Archons, but versus Stalker and like this low number of Phoenix. Like, mutas trade actually quite well, especially with +2 air.
Yeah, exactly. The Archons do make things a little bit awkward, but again, there are only 3 of them, so I mean, you could definitely micro against them. Meanwhile, the Novas still continue to get so many good shots off. Demi can't engage. He's making a wave of 24 Lings behind this, but is it too late?
Yeah, this is the problem when you don't have Vipers out against Colossus Disruptor, and you don't have a sizable amount of Ling Bane to surround. Yeah, GG.
GG gets called. TriGGeR takes honestly a pretty convincing game 1. And as you said, you know, this is where Demi maybe should have aped a little bit more. He did a really good job at hiding his mutas for a very long time there. But yeah, and they did get like, what, 12 probe kills across the map and stuff, but just couldn't really ever deal with that ground army.
Versus that type of ground army, I feel like it's usually the muta player's call to base trade rather than engage, because like Disruptor Stalker trades very well versus Roach Ravager if it doesn't have Lings and Banelings to support it.
Yeah.
Or Vipers.
It does feel like maybe Demi was a little bit indecisive there about whether or not he wanted to go like further into the mutas. I guess he didn't, because we didn't see any additional muta production afterwards. But yeah, if that's the case, then he needed something else, right? As you said, whether it's Ling Bane, whether it's Vipers. Aye. GG. Well played by TriGGeR.
It's always a scary call to make that move out when you see the mutas, like, because he did have the Phoenixes, so he theoretically could have just stayed at home, built up his Phoenix count, and played it safe. But I don't know, maybe he just recognized Demi's ground army was lacking compared to his, and so he could get a breakthrough.
Yeah. It was really bold as well, because you pointed out that he didn't have a War Prism, right? So like, what we saw is what he had. Like, he couldn't reinforce further. So again, it was kind of, I have to wonder if it was a risk or whether he did feel confident in his army. He's like, yo, let's go. Regardless, it did end up working out very well there for TriGGeR, and now we're getting ready for game number 2. And game number 2 is going to be on a much smaller map.
Interested in the betas, then maybe TriGGeR beated Pride. Pride's not a very fun map for Kratos if that gets the gold base.
True. And yeah, I have to wonder if he's gonna. I mean, he can't play the same on a map like this, right? There's no way we see as fast of a third base, or will we?
Yeah, I think both players might need to switch it up a little bit because meter play on Berlingrad is a bit weaker because of the smallness of the map and the ability to counter attack rapidly.
Oh yeah. Well, we'll see if this player here in the top left-hand corner can switch things up. Spawning in the top left-hand corner of Berlingrad LE, the Indian Zerg player representing Alpha X. It is Demi.
Spawning in the right-hand side of Berlingrad LE, currently up 1-0 in this series. It is Team Super's TriGGeR.
Of course, TriGGeR, the team captain as well for Team Canada in Nation Wars. Fun fact: TriGGeR almost didn't even get to participate in Nation Wars. It was pretty close, but thankfully Maple stepped up, and they were able to make a team.
Small thing to point out is Demi got sort of lucky. TriGGeR didn't opt for the block this time because he did not send his Jonan early enough to scout for the adept, and so he would have to put down a 17 or maybe an 18 hatch if TriGGeR opted for the pro block. Yeah,
he would have been punished a little bit there, but thankfully for Demi, TriGGeR didn't go for it. Just like in the previous game, fun fact. So yeah, Demi was able to get his natural on location. No unnatural natural here. And personally, what would you like to see from a Protoss player? I feel like we see like things like Twilight Council openers are fairly common here. Would you risk going for a Stargate opener into Oracles?
Well, I mean, Stargate opener into Oracles is a lot more safe since the Queen nerf.
True.
So it's, I think, perfectly viable to play Oracle into Ground. TriGGeR did 21 Cyber, which is interesting. Usually it's 2020. Bit greedier.
Okay.
And when I mean a bit, like I mean a slight bit. It's very gradual.
Yeah. You see the openers here from both of our players, and yeah, I also agree that, like, again, Stargate and Oracle openers, I mean, are becoming a lot more common, but I would also like to see something a little bit different from TriGGeR, just because, like, I also agree that we've been seeing a lot of like Phoenix play as well, and it's always fun to see that kind of return into fashion. It's been so long since we've seen them in this matchup, but they've been popping up a lot recently.
Shade into the main. Oh, okay. He's committing onto the ramp. He doesn't get a check off on the natural work account. That he might be able to get a little bit done here.
Yeah, we'll see. I mean, oh my god, as he does slip into the main base. Evo will kind of deny him entry into that main, into the middle line, but oh my god, he gets the drone anyway.
I'll say it is a bit sloppy of Demi to have all 4 Zerglings chasing the shade while he's in the base already. Usually you want a 2-2 split in this sort of situation.
Exactly, and honestly, these adepts are dealing a surprising amount of damage, like 2 drone kills. It looks like, okay, Demi will clean all of these up in the end. So 2 drones for 2 adepts, not that bad.
I would say it's a Zerg pivot trade, but the loss of mining time is what might change the equation, and the cancelled Evo.
Yeah, the Evo chamber was a little bit rough there for Demi. But now, you know, with the death of those 2 adepts, he has a little bit more map control. He goes across the map. Unfortunately for Demi, there is an Oracle here to defend, so TriGGeR will get this third up relatively undisturbed.
Like, it's very worth to have an Oracle wasting energy like this. Like, it's usually why you make a Void Ray in these situations, just so it doesn't run out of energy. This was, of course, more the case pre-patch, but it is still a thing post-patch.
Oh yeah, definitely. Ooh. As that second Oracle is coming out as well, we do see Demi actually making a decent amount of lings. I don't know how I feel about this. It looks like he really does want to do something about this third, but with 2 Oracles, like, these lings aren't going to accomplish much.
No. It's a very random time to make lings, I feel like. Like, the third base is already almost complete. TriGGeR misvalued the probe, that is. Oh wait, no. He might have not misguided them. He might have just
Yeah.
been keeping them up in reserve.
I,
Although, I'd rather have them mining the natural until it's time to mine.
Exactly. So maybe it was again just to keep them safe, so they weren't picked off as they were being rallied from that natural to that third base. At the same time, one Oracle did get picked off, so a little bit rough there by TriGGeR. Did get a couple more drone kills. At the same time, Demi wants to get something done with these lings. He tries to break into the natural, but doesn't get past the adept.
Yeah, a thing to notice, because of Demi's link reduction in the game, TriGGeR is actually up in workers right now, and that is not a spot you want to be as a Zerg.
Yeah, exactly. TriGGeR, he's drowning in that money right now, just like we are, because massive shout out to Soundo in the chat. Oh my god. Thank you, Soundo. Thank you, as he actually tipped 75 AUD or USD. I'm not sure, but thank you. Oh my god.
Thank you, Soundo. Exclamation mark KS2 in the chat.
KS2 in the chat. It's thanks to you, Sounder, that we're able to pay for StarDuck's salary and have him pay him for playing Kerrigan Survival 2.
Okay, so this time TriGGeR does get the cancel on the fourth base. And I feel like this is a result of TriGGeR's pretty good early game, and also Demi's sort of like greed in trying to catch up to where he needs to be. And so he's in a much better spot compared to where he was last game, and so this doesn't bode well for Demi, who's also making a hydrogen, and that also is not a good sign.
Yeah, oh boy. We do see Demi trying to expand towards the south. This is immediately scouted by TriGGeR, so I'm sure he's going to be headed over here shortly. There we go, the army is moving out, at least into creep. Meanwhile, this Oracle is going to be amazing because it's headed into the main base, and it looks like it will scout that tech.
He doesn't get the tag off on the hydrogen, but he does get a tag off on the drone next to it, so he does get the scout off. Clearing some creep in the front. Needs to be a bit careful here, maybe a force field to block the wave.
Oh yeah, exactly. Force field is thrown down, but the sentry does get targeted down by those lings, so decent trade here by Demi. Is able to force TriGGeR back, but TriGGeR could have been a lot worse for him, could have been surrounded, so at least he doesn't lose too much in this engagement.
TriGGeR, I feel like he doesn't need to be attacking right now because Demi is a Zerg mining currently off 66 drones, has now just got the 4th mineral line available to mine. And this means his growth is going to be stunted a lot compared to where you normally want to be as a Zerg here.
Oh yeah, definitely. Maybe it's possible that TriGGeR just wants to force units out of Demi, wants to posture on the map and just make it more uncomfortable for Demi to drone. Meanwhile, oh my god, the Oracle dips into the 4th base. There's no anti-air, so drones are going down. We have three spores being forced. Yeah. Oh my god.
This is usually the case at a 4th base where you don't proactively make a spore. As TriGGeR's still poking forth, getting value out of his blink, but needs to be careful. Might lose an immortal. That's pretty big.
Oh my god, that is massive. So again, even though Demi's been having a really hard time economically, he snipes an immortal, which is huge. Almost resetting the immortal count. Now there's only one left, and there only will be one because TriGGeR is switching into those disruptors.
He's going to Disruptor Storm, which I don't hate, but I feel like this was a prime opportunity to transition into fast carriers because you've scouted the hydrogen, which means Demi doesn't have ready access to corruptors. And in fact, lurkers are not known for their ability to shoot up. So a fast carrier switch here could have been a possibility for TriGGeR to get away with.
Yeah, I definitely agree. Like, Demi would have had such a hard time dealing with Skytils. Thankfully for Demi, TriGGeR is committed to a ground army. But as you were pointing out, like this army still has a lot of potential, right? With disruptors, with Storm, depending on how TriGGeR engages, he can deal a lot of damage, but he doesn't have the best answer to lurkers.
Yeah, the disruptors and the Storm are what's going to need to carry him. Now Demi, he doesn't have both upgrades yet, and so TriGGeR's hitting a timing where the lurkers are pretty much dead weight because Stalkers can poke in, blink out. Demi's going for the surround.
Oh, we do see a full surround here. Is it going to be enough? It looks like he will get every single disruptor.
But at a big cost of large chunks of his army. He looks like he will be cleaning up this army, and so he does buy time for his lurk upgrades to finish. But at the same time, he does not want to be remaining on this tech for too longer, as TriGGeR is dropping a fleet beacon, and Demi's going to need to get something done here before his army gets outscaled by TriGGeR.
Yeah, we were, again, concerned about TriGGeR going just into Skytoss earlier, and now he is fully aware, like, oh my god, Demi, you've got Hydra Lurker, Viper, going to Skytoss is the way to go. It's on the way. Thankfully for Demi, like, again, this transition, it's still going to take a little bit of time, so maybe he can make something happen in the interim, but, ooh, 5th base gets denied, and that Zealot run by, okay, thankfully there are roaches here to deal with it.
Well, those roaches are kind of bruised, but reinforcing lanes should be enough to help. And Demi is going for an attack on TriGGeR's 3rd base.
Oh, that he is. Meanwhile, Storm is connecting here on some of these Hydras. The Lurkers are still having a lot of free, like, reign over this position, though. Oh, but actually, TriGGeR, he blinks forward. He tries to snipe one, but he doesn't get it.
Standing Cloud. And yeah, this is a bit awkward for TriGGeR, who does have +2 almost finishing disruptors coming out. Oh, ooh, very nice feedback. Clears up this position, and Demi, this is not looking promising for him.
Wow, it was so close there with that feedback, with that Purification Nova. TriGGeR cleans everything up, and behind this, the carriers are on the way, and Demi still doesn't have a Spire. He still doesn't have a real answer to them. Not yet.
And also, Demi, he has no carapace upgrades, and TriGGeR is chronoing out +1, and generally, this is the dynamic we look for. If the Zergers even are ahead in carapace upgrades, they can trade okay with the Grand Army. It's not the best, but if the Protoss is ever ahead on upgrades, it's just not a contest. Like, carriers just shred Hydralis, Queen, especially if they don't have Infestors for Microbial Shroud, which is, I think, Demi's only option, to be honest, to survive, to go into a late game.
Yeah, it's just so unlucky for Demi because he has an Overseer in between the 3rd and the natural, and he dipped in earlier, and he just hasn't gone into the main. He doesn't know about the Skytoss transition.
Yeah, I was going to point that out earlier before I got distracted, but yeah, Demi, he doesn't know, and what he knows, TriGGeR's still on this army, which Demi is perfectly happy to stay on ground for, but gets the 2 disruptors. TriGGeR's posturing here, maybe just looking to trade out a bit of army.
Yeah, exactly. Like TriGGeR, he was basically close to being maxed out, and he needs to get rid of it. Like, ground toss has come and gone. It's all about the sky toss, and unfortunately, Demi is still making just nothing but lurkers. We were talking about, like, Microbial Shroud maybe being the answer. Problem is that Demi has turned almost every single Hydra into a lurker.
Yeah. If you check the units tab, the only thing that shoots up in Demi's army is 6 queens versus soon to be 7 carriers.
It's a bit of a feels bad, man. Exclamation mark for Nana, this one Overseer. Like, it's so lucky that it's been avoided this entire time, but he just hasn't gone into the main base. Finally, he's going in. Kind of
a bit too late. Does see the chrono, sees the chrono and the fleet beacon, and I feel like Demi's heart is about to sink when he sees the Skytoss fleet come into his 5th.
You can see it here. Immediately, Demi starts Hydras, but he's maxed out. He's maxed out on roaches. Like, we have 3 Hydras on the way, and that is it. That is all of his anti-air. So he's going for a base trade. He knows that he cannot fight the carriers.
But the thing is, literally none of his army shoots up. So TriGGeR can just recall the carriers if he wants to and keep pushing forward with his ground army.
Yeah.
He's going back because he knows that as long as he survives, he's going to win this game.
Yeah, exactly. Meanwhile, Demi, he's dealing some decent damage. You know, he's going to be able to get this base, maybe a mineral line, but here we go. The carriers are coming in. Oh my god. All these lurkers are so exposed. We see the feedbacks on the Viper, so we're not even going to see some parasitic bombs or anything to help out either.
I don't know. I'm inclined to throw these lurkers away at this point. Like, or the roaches. Like, he just needs free supply to make units that shoot up.
Yeah, the lurkers are actually hurting him more than they're helping him. Like, he needs to be able to make an army. He's supply blocked right now. He's making overlords. Carriers are coming on in, and again, there's a queen. There's a bunch of spores. I mean, spores do help out, but are they really going to be enough? GG, well played. TriGGeR takes the series 2-0 with that hidden Skytoss transition.
And I feel like a lot of this game hinged on TriGGeR getting that clean hold at his fourth with the feedback on the Viper, getting that disruptor Nova off and clearing Demi out. Because once you lose momentum as the lurker player and you get the transition off into Skytoss, like there's not much you can do. Like the only viable option is to just turtle with Microbial Shroud, Spore, Queen, Hydra, and pray that you can get up to your carrier, to your Corruptor Viper Ball.
Yeah. It's unfortunate. It's just one of those things where, you know, StarCraft is a game of, you know, limited information and being able to gather that over time in that game, and it's just something that Demi wasn't able to do. He wasn't able to scout, and being unable to scout means that he just straight up wasn't prepared. Again, we saw it. He had 3 Hydras. three Hydras was his anti-air, and the 6 Queens and Spores, I guess, but alas, it was not meant to be. Congratulations, TriGGeR. He moves on to the semifinals. He is our very first semifinalist, and he's going to be waiting for the winner of Geralt versus Nazin.